Hey there, Phillips here. This video is going to be on the Fire Multishot Unhallowed Demon Hunter build. And it's basically the same as it was last patch. Got a few buffs and some tweaks, a couple new items. So it's a lot stronger than it was. You can see here I'm doing greater F75, and you can actually see on the screen spec, skills and abilities, legendary gems, cube powers. Everything you need is right there on the screen. So you can take it from here, or you can stay tuned and get the full explanation. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and switch this over the game, and I'm going to go to the new set and talk about some of the new items and complementary items and things like that. So here we have Unhallowed, amplifying your multi-shot damage as well as the vengeance, damage increase, damage reduction, and then discipline generation. So basically the same there, a little bit extra damage. And then we have, as per usual, focus and restraint, wraps of clarity, hellfire amulet, and then we have the hunter's wrath, dead man's legacy, and then the Yang's recur. So the weapon and the quiver are going to be really important for the damage potential with this build. Now I can talk a little in depth about the skill choice and abilities here. So we have Evasive Fire Hardened for the armor. Again, you can run focus here if you have hatred issues, depending on the Greater Rift level. Harden may be more or less useful. Focus is good for the hatred. So figure either way on that. I'm preferring Hardened. With permanent seeds, your hatred generation is pretty good. So multi-shot with Arsenal. Here, this is the highest damage potential multi-shot because of the rockets combined with ballistics. Going to be really good damage potential. Vault Tumble for the mobility. Make the trap here for the crit chance. Vengeance with Seethe again for the hatred and the damage bonus. And Invigoration for the increased discipline to increase the damage with the Unhallowed. Passives, we have Awareness for the cheat death, Thrill of the Hunt for the slow. This is going to proc your Call of the Weak and your Bane of the Trapped. And we got Ballistics, as I mentioned, with the rockets, and then Ambush here. And I have Call of the Weak on the Hellfire. If you don't have a good Hellfire, the weakest passive here probably going to be Ambush, but with this setup it is quite important to have all 5 passives. Now I'm going to talk about the itemization and the stat priority. Pretty standard. You want to get your crit chance, crit damage, and again the cooldown reduction. This is another permanent vengeance build, so you have the Dawn and the Cube for the cooldown reduction on vengeance, as well as that 37 cooldown reduction to get 100% uptime on that. So cooldown, the other stat that is going to be desirable is going to be area damage. On my shoulders I would like to have area damage, but the cooldown is the highest priority. On the helmet I'm using vitality, crit chance instead of multi-shot, so I'm getting 100 multi-shot damage on the quiver. The vitality is going to be preferred on the helmet. On the chest we got the hatred regen here, as well as the discipline. The discipline is going to be the most important because you do get a damage boost based on the amount of discipline you have. So discipline is going to be the highest priority there, and then hatred, and then defensive stats. The belt, pants, and boots, just defensive stats. You get your multi-shot damage on the boots, crit chance and fire damage on the bracers, fire damage, dual crit on the necklace. Typical rolls here, dual crit on the rings. And then I do have cooldown on this one ring to get me to that appropriate amount. You can get the cooldown elsewhere, potentially on the weapon or the gloves, to avoid it on the ring, but however you have to line it up to get 100% vengeance. and then crit chance and damage modifiers, as well as vitality. Survivability with this build is kind of an issue, so you are going to want to get some vitality. You'll see I have it on the weapon and the quiver, as well as the gloves, the helm, and technically on my chest that all res could be vitality. It'd probably be a little bit better, but it's not that big of a difference. Again, the discipline is the most important here, as well as on the weapon and the quiver. That's the stat priority. That's what you should be looking at. About 40% fire, 115 multi-shot damage. You could have potentially some more area damage as well. As I mentioned, I could run it on the weapon, the ring here. Now I'm going to mention the legendary gems. We got Bane of the Trap for the damage, Paguk for the damage and armor, and then Stricken here for the single target Rift Guardian. So multi-shot is pretty heavy on the AoE damage, going to be lacking on that single target. Stricken's going to come in, help you deal with the Rift Guardian. Now I'm going to talk about the paragon points. Again, standard stuff, get your movement speed to 25, then dump the rest into dexterity. On the offense, cooldown reduction to have 100% vengeance, and then because you're using a quiver, you're going to prefer crit damage, then crit chance, and then attack speed last. Defense, bottom to top, skipping life regen. And then on utility, resource reduction is going to be high priority, and then area damage. And life on hit last. Now I'm going to jump back over to some more gameplay, and I'm going to kind of talk about how to play the build and some tips and techniques. So, the big thing that you want to make sure that you're doing is keeping the Paguk stacks up, as well as the focus and restraint, the wraps of clarity, so all your buffs are going. You have to spam your multi-shot, cast evasive fire at regular intervals, and then your vengeance is just on auto cast. As soon as it's up, you want to cast that. The vault is for the survivability and the mobility if you need to get around, and then bait the trap obviously for the damage bonus. So as you're moving around, you're going to want to kind of aggro the monsters while you're not on fire, because you have the convention of elements, elemental rotation happening. So the idea is to kind of aggro a lot of monsters when you're not on fire, and then fall back, place down your bait the trap, and then you're on fire and you're dumping hatred on fire. So a lot like the Marauder setup with the convention, you want to make sure that you cast your generator right before you go to fire. That way you can just spam multi-shot the whole time you're on fire and get the most damage potential from that. Also standing in your caltrops while you're doing the damage. Then you'll see when I'm not on fire, I'm trying to move through the rift and aggro monsters to fall back and set up. That way when I am on fire, I can put my caltrops down and I can spam my multi-shot to do damage. And I mean, that's pretty much it. It's pretty straightforward, pretty simple gameplay. The potential of the build out of all the Demon Hunter builds is probably the weakest. It's really close to Natalia, but it is a solid build, and it's fun if you do. Again, some people prefer the gameplay of the multi-shot build, so this would be an optimized build around that setup. Personally, I'm not a big fan, but you can see here with this shield pylon kind of the power of the build. So I grab that shield pylon and I'm able to aggro everything and then fall back and really do some damage here. So I'm just going to kind of let this play out, and you guys can see here kind of the damage potential of the build in an ideal situation. And you could definitely push higher up to, you know, Greater Rift level 80 about, but I don't know how much further than that this build will really be able to go. And one other thing you do have to keep in mind is the Unhallowed buff. So you'll see the buff lasts for 8 seconds, it gives you damage reduction and damage bonus, so you are going to make sure, you're going to want to make sure that you are moving away from the monsters at least once every 8 seconds. If you stand there and face tank for too long, you're going to lose that damage buff, and you're going to be doing a lot less damage. So you can see here the value out of that shield pylon. I'm way ahead of the timer now. It's quite strong, the damage potential is there, it's just lacking on the survivability and kind of the sustain compared to other Demon Hunter builds. But it is fun. And I will be making a Torment speed farming build because I do think that's kind of the place for Unhallowed. Unhallowed will be one of the fastest Torment farming builds for the Demon Hunters, so you guys can stay tuned for that. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.